Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us here today to talk about the ReWRAP Act. As we know, it did, not make it over to the opposite house. And I just thought we could maybe start a little bit by you telling me why you think that might have happened, why it didn't make it out of the House and into the Senate.
Well, I think the first reason is it's a really complicated policy that is a very big change for our recycling systems. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the problem, 52% of recyclable materials in the state of Washington are being landfilled or incinerated. So, there's a lot of different reasons for this, but we know that there is so much recycled waste that could be used for new products and not put in our landfills that are literally filling up because of the fact that packaging that touches products has so many different stakeholders. Not only is the policy confusing to understand and explain to policymakers, they're hearing from an insane amount of stakeholders, good and bad, about the bill. And I think the noise overall was difficult for people to parse through. The fact of the matter is in the end, we did have the votes. We simply ran out of time during a short session, because as you know, in even years, there's 60 days, and that is a very, very quick period of time to get a bill passed. But I'm feeling really confident that we've set the bill up for a successful path for next year. We've gotten the bill language in really good shape. We've addressed dozens and dozens of stakeholder feedback in the bill, and I think we're on good footing for next year for sure.
Thank you. And so we heard a lot in the public hearings and in the executive sessions about potentially pairing this bill back with the bottle bill that it was part of last year. Do you think that that's something that you'll move forward for next year, or will they stay separate?
No, I think they're going to stay separate because what we heard from lawmakers was that they really wanted to consider both policies separately. That continued this year because there was overwhelming support for the ReWRAP Act, but there just was not the support for the bottle bill. And there were a lot of different reasons for that. And that was a bill that I wasn't working on as closely this year. But they are very separate policies. And so I think that we're going to keep it that way, really at the request of legislators who want to consider them separately.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, because there was definitely some questions from the students about the bottle bill and how it has
How it
changed from
interplays.
the.
Well, I think
Yeah,
the interesting
exactly.
thing to know is that in my bill, bottles would be a part of the producer responsibility system that we're setting up. If or should a bottle bill be enacted in the state of Washington, those materials would then be diverted to that bottle deposit system, whatever it looks like. But the good news is that these are some of the most problematic materials in the recycle stream, bottles and cans, and we need to do something with them. And so we do have a solution for them through the ReWRAP Act. And I just think we haven't had a bottle deposit bill passed in modern history and really in any state. And I think it's a heavier lift is what I would say. And I think there were a lot of questions around accessibility, making sure that bottle deposit drop-off locations are accessible to residents, and equity and what that looked like. We don't have those same concerns in the ReWRAP Act. And I think that keeping them separate is a good idea for now and into the future.
We did hear a lot of opposition about a need for a needs-based assessment. I'm sure you're familiar with the term.
Yes.
And so how did y'all respond to that when you're discussing with the legislators and the stakeholders as you're moving forward?
Yeah, so there have been 4 state-funded studies over the past 5 years that have all pointed to a producer responsibility model that's imagined in this legislation as the solution to modernizing and bringing more recycling to the state of Washington. So what a needs assessment will do, which is baked into my bill as well, is not the mechanism for what we need to do to solve the problem. We already know that's producer responsibility. It'll tell us the how are we going to get the stuff from people. And so it's really hard to do a needs assessment. A pre-needs assessment is what some of the opponents had said. And honestly, it's a way to delay progress and maintain the status quo, right? They don't want change because the current system works well for them. The current system doesn't work well for anyone else. That's why we're trying to change it. But the problem with doing this pre-needs assessment is that once the system is stood up, we're going to have to conduct another needs assessment because folks are not going to give us the real-time data we need at the very moment we're launching the program to make it actually successful. So I've rejected that as a delay tactic, and I think many people were understanding that, and that's why we were so successful this year.
So as we are moving into the interim and, students get really excited during the legislative session, but then, we have many 200 days of a lot of advocacy time. So what would you suggest for students who want to advocate for this bill and what they can do in the next 200 days or so?
Well, first of all, I'm so excited that the students are so excited about this bill. And I have to tell you that of anything I've worked on in my whole tenure here, this bill has garnered the most excitement from young people. And I will tell you that lawmakers who heard from young people in their communities were very inspired to support this bill. So your voice absolutely matters. So what I would say to you is wherever you live, arm yourself with information about why you support this bill, and I can make that available to you if you contact my office. And ask for a meeting with your state reps, you have 2 state reps, and your state senator, and tell them why you would like them to vote for and be a champion for this bill next session. That means all the difference. Send them letters, ask for meetings, and also consider writing an op-ed or a letter to the editor in your local paper, because your local elected leaders we read the paper every day, seeing what our community members are asking for. And I can't tell you how incredibly powerful it is for us to hear from the next generation of leaders, which is you, telling us what's important to you and what your priorities are. So that's what I would do. And if you have any questions about how to interact with your particular lawmakers, please contact me, because your input into this process is extremely valuable to me, and I want to do anything I can to help you be successful delivering that message.
Great. I certainly hope they take you up on that offer.
Put my contact information, my email and my phone number.
That sounds great. We'll put it in the lower thirds.
I would love that.
It'll be perfect.
I would love that.
I guess my final question has to do with the Climate Commitment Act. That's something that we talked about with the students at the beginning of session, saying, the initiatives in the Climate Commitment Act are something that may throw some environmental bills that cost money into the conversation per se. And so do you feel that the Climate Commitment Act, that your bill was kind of a victim of this conversation that's happening with the Climate Commitment Act?
It might have been. I think that people are very sensitive to anything that might increase costs for everyday people right now. The beauty about my bill is that it will pay for expanded recycling and free recycling services for every Washingtonian, paid for by the producers of products. So people who have recycling at their front door will see that bill reduced to almost zero. And also, if you don't have curbside recycling, but you have garbage curbside pickup, you will be getting free recycling service. So I think that we were able to uncouple that quite a bit, because the cost is truly being borne by the producers, the people who have created the problem. It's like a polluter pays model. And we have seen in other countries and continents and jurisdictions that have passed producer responsibility models and have been on the books for decades, have not seen an increase in costs on everyday goods that they shop for at the grocery store. And in fact, I would argue that Washingtonians are already paying for producer responsibility but not receiving the benefit, because multinational corporations are not changing the prices where they're selling products in California and British Columbia and Oregon, who have this program, and what they're selling here in Washington. So it could have gotten swept up in that, but I feel like we had such a strong educational and foundational year for the bill that we are set up for extreme success next year. And I mean, that is my deepest hope, that we can get this policy passed, because we know that recycling has a direct impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And, I think it's a true win-win to get this bill passed.
Great. So you definitely plan on reintroducing it, redropping it.
Yes.
Next year.
Absolutely. We've made such incredible progress. I'm so proud of our team, and we're ready to get it done.